Hi there, welcome to some of the latest news on the Jay Slater missing person case. We need to discuss the mystery of the missing key of Jay's, in which during the night when out there, he lost it. His friends supposedly ditched him, returned back to where they were staying at, but Jay, because he had no key, is that the key factor, the turning point behind him going with those other guys, those strangers, and being taken to that other Airbnb in a more remote area? Was the key the beginning, of him going missing? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Welcome to those who are watching. If you do want to catch up on some of my previous coverage on this case, top right corner of the screen where the I symbol is, you'll be able to find it. But right now we need to focus in on this article and try and work out how significant is this missing key. The title of this article reads, Mystery over Jay Slater's key that he lost on night out when teen was ditched by pals leading to fateful Airbnb trip. So it seems pretty self-explanatory there. Jay's dad, Warren, has questioned why his teenage son ended up at a remote Airbnb with two grown men who he doesn't really know. Now, granted, I did do a previous video trying to understand an alternative concept as to why he would go with strangers. Was it because of birds of a feather flock together? Because supposedly the odd individual who he was around, done in the past for, was it Class A drug dealing 9 years ago or so. Jay Slater getting in trouble himself in the past with gang activity, a machete attack on a supposedly innocent individual at the time. Are these paths crossing with one another? Well, that aside, what about the key situation? For the title to say the teen was ditched by pals, they don't seem much like friends, do they? Do friends just abandon you, especially when you're in a foreign country, especially for the very first time? I thought people are supposed to stick together. Clearly not, huh? Jay Slater's family has been left puzzled after the teen is said to have lost the keys to his apartment the night before he went missing. 19-year-old vanished in Tenerife, as we've seen, after going with two men to a secluded Airbnb hours away from where he was staying with his own pals. But, you've lost your keys. What do? You try looking for them, and if there's no hope there, where do you go, right? I mean, if you're with other people, maybe the other people will have keys themselves. But if they've left you, such as these friends, where do you go? What do you do? Now, I do have a counterpoint, though, but I'll include that later if you stick around long enough. So there's a photo of one of the guys, Ayub Qasim, the one renting out the Airbnb. This is a mugshot of him from roughly 9 years ago to do with Class A drug dealing, I think in Wales. That is the Airbnb, what you can see, which Jay stayed in for a certain amount of time, hours away from where he was staying with his own pals the night before he vanished. And I think where they were originally staying was somewhere in Los Cristianos, I believe. So some distance apart. From getting here to, I think, back down there is like an 11-hour walk, which would take quite a bit of mileage and a heavy toll on your body, especially if you're not an experienced hiker. What do we have here? Some party footage, maybe? Let's say, partying. Jay was last seen leaving the house alone as he went on a treacherous 11-hour hike and hasn't been seen since. It's interesting that Jay wanted to head back to the original place where he was staying at, but in the first place he wanted to distance himself. Did he want to distance himself, or did he have no choice? If his friends never ditched him, would Jay still have gone off with those two other guys? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Would it have played a difference? The home had been rented out by convicted drug dealer Ayub Qasim, who has since been dubbed Johnny Vegas by private investigators. Why can't we just call him Ayub? It's easier to remember. The missing Brit was seen leaving the Papayago nightclub with the older men Sunday, June 16th. Officials are still unsure why he chose to go back to the Airbnb instead of returning to his apartment in Los Cristianos with pals Lucy Law and Brad Hargraves. A new theory suggests he had lost the key to his room, leading to him looking for a new place to stay after his pals went home early. So this is where I can add in my alternative points. So, let's just say you're out partying, you're with some friends, they ditch you, which is a bit rude in a way. especially when you're in a foreign country, first time round, you're around many strangers. Sometimes you like to stick together, stay safe, but clearly that wasn't on their minds from how it's been worded in the case. So the two friends ditch you, go back home, they've got their keys, they're okay. You lose your key, what do? You look about, ask, have you seen my key? Does anyone know where it is? Then what do you do then? Well, what Jay could have done at that point at the party, and surely he would have had signal, surely he would have had a decent phone battery charge. He could have just called his friends and say, hey, I'm still here, I've lost my key, what do I do? And one of those friends who was returning back could have said, oh, well, we'll wait for you to get back and we'll let you in. See, the only question I have is where they were staying at. Okay, if anyone can answer it, it'll be appreciated. Were they staying in one room with multiple beds? Or were they all staying in the same building? Do you know, like when you get a hotel, but you've got different separate rooms and each separate room has its own key, but you may not be on the same level, floor or hallway as you're all staying in. Does that make sense? Because, you can rent out a room, you can stay in a room which has several beds and you can all sleep in there individually, or you might get your own individual room for the night or however long, and that applies to everyone else. And if that was the case, individual rooms with individual keys, then Jay wouldn't be able to get back in. But he could have at least knocked on his friend's door or whoever else nearby and say, hey, could you let me in or something? So there were still other ways around it. Okay, you've lost your key. Is it the end of the world? Not exactly. Do you have friends that are staying at the same place, in the same room or nearby? Yes. Well, that's good enough. That's what Jay should have done, okay? From the looks of it, Jay would have been closer to the place where he was staying at with his friends than that 11-hour walk, if he used to walk to the other Airbnb, which the Ayub guy was renting out. So you could say poor decision making by Jay, but for the key, was the key the catalyst behind his mind thinking, do I go back to that place even though I haven't got a key and maybe knock on the odd door to get people's attention so they can let me in or we can work things out? Or do I just decide to forgo that and go in a completely different direction with completely different humans who I don't even know, who they are, strangers? I mean, it does seem like poor decision making, doesn't it? Even if it wasn't all down to the key situation. You could say the key was part of the factor and reasoning behind his choice, but maybe it's also because Jay, did he feel comfortable around those two guys at least to start things off? Well, at least how it was worded later on within this case and the news articles, what we read, at some point Jay did feel uncomfortable around those two guys. So if you just interpret that situation of feeling uncomfortable around people, is that because you're there by choice, but at the same time you didn't really have much of a choice because your other options ran out, and with no key, what could you really do? There's different ways of thinking about it. Did Jay feel vulnerable at the point of when he lost his key? How did he feel about that? Was losing the key bad enough to create a reaction or some kind of reach out for help then? Because at least how the case has gone, that Jay did make a call to his friends much later on in the process of going missing. When he was walking about, he was lost, dehydrated, scared. That's when he contacted his friends. So way before that, when he lost the key, I guess he wasn't as scared because he was still in the party mood and he was, around civilization and people. It wasn't that bad. But, it's a shame he didn't make a call earlier. And if he did make a call earlier, what would the friends have done? Would they have done much? Would they have been pretty laid back and think, oh, well, never mind? I mean, I just think it's a bit dodgy how the friends would abandon him. I'm not saying that Jay is innocent because I am aware that he does have a dark past. And if any of that did catch up on him on the holiday, or if he crossed paths with other bad people and birds of a feather situation, I do acknowledge that. But just in general, the friends do appear a bit dodgy. They shouldn't just abandon you and go away. Unless it's nearby, close to where they're staying at, then I don't think it would be as much of a problem. And when they say that they ditched him, did they directly say, hey, we're going home now, do you want to come with us, or are you going to stay here? I don't remember hearing that conversation. If that at least occurred, then not as suspicious, at least in my mind. But they just flat out blank him, oh, we'll just go off now anyway. That's a bit rude. So yeah, new theory, lost key, leading him to looking for a new place to stay. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I would say it would make more sense as if you were on holiday, you were traveling somewhere by yourself, and you rented out a place to stay at by yourself and no one else. So that one key was for you, and if you lost it, you were screwed. So you needed somewhere else to stay at. That would be, that would link more to this possible theory. Okay? Messages from Ayub seen by the Sun show that Jay had complained to him about losing his key on the night out. Jay's family have previously blasted any claims that he didn't return to his apartment because of the keys, saying he's not stupid. Okay. So the family strongly believe that Jay Slater isn't stupid enough to go with strangers just because he lost his keys. That, like I was saying earlier on, even if you lost your keys, you could still return back to the place you were staying at and get the attention of your friends or whoever that's present, and you'd probably be allowed in. But as a counterpoint, whilst the family can defend Jay Slater and say he's not that stupid, well, he was stupid enough to join a gang in the past, and based off the watch situation, supposedly stupid enough to steal an expensive watch, which could put your life in danger, and be another possible theory as to how things expanded and went down sour or down south. Not literally, but, the wording of it, the language. So I think to say he's not stupid, I can understand the family defending their son. It's a normal thing to do. But when you look at it from the outside looking in with no emotional connections or conflicts of interest, and you piece it all together, you think, well, you can make silly decisions. It doesn't mean to say that you're a stupid person in general, but you can, do poor decision making, a poor call made at a point, whether you're quite there with it, whether you're drunk, whether you're in the mood partying and you're just not quite thinking correctly. I mean, stealing a watch supposedly, was one in the right frame of mind, or did they know exactly what they were doing? Opportunistic behaviour. They thought they were doing a smart thing, but may have backfired. Probably a silly decision, especially with being in trouble in the past. You want to be reoffending again? That doesn't sound like a good idea. You want to surround yourself with a gang, machete gang? Doesn't sound like a smart idea. So did one learn with time or not? It's not like I'm saying that the past has caught up with him, but in terms of his decision making over time, has he learnt? Or the same mistakes being made over and over again, which could either get him in trouble, portray him as a bad individual, or something else, right? It says, his uncle Glenn Duncan told the Sun, the fact he has come out and said all his mates have left him and he had nowhere to go. He was 10 minutes from his apartment in Los Cristianos. Well, there we go. I'm glad it gives, like a time frame of how far away it is. 10 minutes away from the apartment. So based off that, okay, in my opinion right now, Jay Slater clearly had the opportunity to head back to safety, or at least more safety than where he was actually going to go. So there's a chance that maybe the key situation isn't the be-all and end-all, but it may have been a part of sparking a conversation and for the others convincing him to go along with him. Just as a possibility, right? So let's say you say, I've lost my phone, or I've lost my keys, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then a stranger approaches you and hears about it and says, you know what, come with me, I'll sort you out, it's okay. And then the other person could say, yeah, but I'm only like 10, 15 minutes away, I could probably walk back anyway. And they say, nope, don't worry, we've got you covered, you come with us, we'll make sure you're safe. If you use a bit of persuasive language, you could convince the individual. So we're saying that Jay Slater is naive all of a sudden and vulnerable to listen to others. Does it link back to the gang situation in the past? Just as a discussion point in the past joining a gang. Was that by choice? Was he forced to? Was he pressured? Was he groomed into joining a gang? Was there any patterns there which could apply to him being on holiday now around somewhat older individuals? Did he feel that there was an authoritative presence and he thought they can keep him safe? Did he develop some kind of trust rapport within them? Was he pressured to go with them and that's why he felt uncomfortable afterwards when around the two guys? It makes you think, right? You know, if the apartment where they were staying at was like 2-3 hours away, then you could argue and say maybe that's more of a reason as to why Jay would go with the guys after losing the key, because they can guarantee him a place of, you know, living or a form of safety for a bit. But considering it being much more remote, could be considered a bit more dodgy. The more remote it is, the less eyes that will see whatever happens. Are we saying that it was planned out, all this? Not exactly, I don't want to jump ahead. But it's interesting, 10 minutes away from the apartment they were staying at, and yet Jay supposedly decided to ignore that and go with the other people who he doesn't even know. That is a bit odd, I'll be honest with you. He's not stupid. If he didn't have a room key, he could have gone to reception for a replacement. Right, so that implies that they were possibly staying in separate rooms, but nevertheless, yeah, you can always reach out for help somehow, somewhere. But could the receptionist have said, you know, do we have proof of who you are and this and that for the key? But to be honest, they may have remembered his name, and if they said, sorry, what's your full name? And you say Jay Slater, oh yeah, you're on the list here, here's a spare key or whatever. So they probably still would have sorted him out. So, okay, fair points mentioned in a way. Jay's dad, Warren, 58, has also questioned why his teenage son ended up at a remote home with two grown men. Jay Slater's dad furiously owed a search. The night before Jay went missing, Ayub claims he drove Jay and the third friend back to the Airbnb where they all went to sleep. Claims he drove Jay and the third friend. Which is the third friend? In the morning, he offered to drive the teen back to Los Cristianos Resort after he had a nap. But why did that not happen? A hungry and tired Jay said he wanted to leave immediately and walked off by himself, planning to catch a nearby bus. You know, if Jay was possibly somewhat comfortable to go with the guys in the car to this Airbnb, then why not accept the offer of being driven back to where he needed to go, right? That might have been all right. I'm not saying it is for sure. When quizzed by former detective Mark William Thomas, Ayub says he was woken up by a phone call from an unnamed friend of Jay saying he was in a ditch and had been cut by a cactus. For Jay to say he was in a ditch, that doesn't sound too good, right? Could he have ended up in another ditch later, or a place where his body would have been concealed? I wonder. It was around this time that the alarm was raised for Jay, who had been spotted heading towards the mountainous road to Tenerife Park. His phone last pinged in the rugged parkland where cops focused a massive 2-week search, and it's gone on since. Okay, mammoth op with countless emergency responders revealed Ayub, jailed 2015, drugs. Jay came to the house alive and he left the house alive, and that's what Ayub insisted. He also said it was nothing to hide, and he slammed Facebook detectives for screenshotting his Instagram. I mean, if your Instagram's publicly viewable, then it shouldn't be a problem. You don't want your face shown about, then maybe avoid it being public, possibly. Spanish cops have spoken to both the men already and cleared them to return to the UK, dubbing them irrelevant to the investigation, but there have been calls for police to speak to them again amid the ongoing mystery of Jay's disappearance. Glenn said he was left baffled by a police decision. Jay's family returned to the mountains to retrace. Yeah, we've seen that before. The Sun revealed 50,000 GoFundMe. We looked at it yesterday. And I think that will do for now, because most of this will be other stuff, but there's like a bit of a backstory there at least. Early hours of Monday, 17th, Lucy and Brad ready to head back to their hotel, but Jay wanted to keep partying. Okay, so that clears up my question there, supposedly, which is good to see. So the two friends wanted to go back, and I guess asking Jay, hey, you coming with us? And Jay's like, no, I want to keep on partying. But they're only 10 minutes away from partying, the place of living at the time, so, you know, it wasn't that bad. And then losing the keys whilst partying, oh well, only 10 minutes away, I can go to the reception. But instead of all that, even though the friends did ask, oh, can we go back? Want to stay here? And then decide to go with strangers. Was Jay stupid enough to do that? I wonder. It was then that he left south of the island and headed to an Airbnb. There we go. And we've seen most of that already. Okay. Cressine claims he drove Jay and his friend back to their accommodation and said they all went to sleep. In the morning, he offered to drive the team back, but he wanted to leave. There we go. Claimed Airbnb quickly was scared. Oh yeah, it was that his phone last pinged, hadn't seen or heard of. He was woken up by the morning by a phone call from an unnamed friend of Jay saying he was in a ditch somewhere. Jay's friend Lucy claimed to have tracked down the two men in Airbnb after he vanished, quizzing them on the morning of Jay's disappearance. Some reports suggested Lucy knew the two men, although it's not clear how. Yeah, Lucy's been a bit of a dodgy individual in the background, like what some people have been saying in the comments. Her comments, her changes, her stories switching and changing. And when people's stories switch and change and they can't be consistent, do they really know what they're talking about, or are they just simply slipping up? After reading through some of that, I would say, in my opinion, for now at least, that the key situation isn't the definitive defining moment as to why he decided to go with those other guys, but it could have been a part of one of the factors which struck up a conversation and the possible persuasion in him going with them. But, you know, at the end of the day, Jay, based off his age, an adult, can make his own decisions as well, right? So there's always that factor. You can always let me know what you think down below. Do you think the missing key situation is significant to the case or not that important at all? Thanks for watching. Check out for more videos later when they do come. Goodbye for now.